Hello, freak bitches.
It's like, because I promote a lot of things that, we might disagree on, but, I promote a lot of ideas in science that I've seen the evidence for, and I've seen a lot of it.
Like, what would we disagree on?
Some dietary things, I would guess, like, because, we can hash them. Like, I don't know, what are your thoughts on GMOs?
I think genetically modified foods is apparently almost everything that you buy at the supermarket.
Okay, we agree on that then, probably. And
every
I think
tomato you buy, every orange, if you look at a piece of corn, it's organic. That shit is genetically modified. It's been modified for 100 years.
You're gonna make me cry tears of happiness.
Look, I've talked. I had Kevin Fulton on before.
I was so happy you had him on because he's never in California. We went out for dinner that night.
And he takes a lot of shit because Monsanto has funded some of the studies that they've done, but the studies are real, and the studies you can see the results. They're not manipulated.
Yeah, Kevin, well, actually, they funded his communication program so that he can come out and do things like this, and they never funded any of his research.
That's
and
right. You're right. I misspoke.
And no, it's fine. But you know what? And this is where he got a lot of shit was that he said, I have nothing to do with Monsanto, and like I think if he just said, you know what, they fund my communication program, but they don't have anything to do with my research, nobody would have. I think people still would have been mad, but I think people would have been far less mad, and I feel so bad that he went through everything with that because it's
tricky. If you do anything with Monsanto, it's tricky.
Yeah, I mean, I just took a tour there and I got hate mail.
Yeah.
We were so careful because I was out there for other business, and they were like, "Oh, you're going to be out in Missouri. Come have a tour." Like they didn't pay.
Visit the Death Star.
And I had so much fun. Like they have a lot of really cool tech there, and if you were ever in the area, they'd gladly show you around. So they were nice to me. It was funny. One of the rumors that I heard about that was that they only have organic food in the cafeteria. I'm like, I'm taking my camera around and taking pictures of everything.
The word organic is such a weird word too. It's like what's organic and what's not now. It's like it's a very weird definition.
Organic uses pesticides, and that's something I think people see.
Does it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I
thought that was the whole point of organic, is that you don't use pesticides.
No, I'm sure there are some organic farmers that don't use any.
Well,
that's possible.
Let's Google this. What defines organic food? Let's find out what is the accepted definition of organic food.
Do you want to hear it from me and then from Google to see if I'm accurate?
Sure.
All right. So organic food works by certain farming or agricultural standards, and they can use certain pesticides. In most cases, these pesticides are derived from natural sources. Not always, but most of the time. And some of these pesticides include pesticides like rotenone and the pyrethrins. And also, if you're familiar with BT corn, the BT toxin is also used in organic farming because it's a naturally occurring toxin. It can be used and sprayed topically on organic produce. So a lot of these, the things that we think of as just conventional farming practices, definitely used in organic farming. It doesn't make it any better or worse. It just, in a lot of cases, it's a little more expensive, partially because of the certification process and partially because it uses older farming techniques that need, a little more land, that type of stuff. It also uses till farming practices that, digs up the ground a bit more and can release a little more CO2. So in general, I tend to, here we go.
Simply stated, organic produce or other ingredients are grown without the use of pesticides, synthetic fertilizers, sewage sludge, genetically modified organisms, or ionizing radiation. Animals that produce meat, poultry, eggs, and dairy products do not take antibiotics or growth hormones.
Hold on.
The USDA National Organic Program defines organic as follows. Organic food is produced by farmers who emphasize the use of renewable resources and the conservation of soil and water to enhance environmental quality for future generations. Organic meat, poultry, and eggs and dairy products are made from animals that are given no antibiotics or growth hormones. Organic food is produced without using most conventional pesticides. Here we go. Fertilizers made with synthetic ingredients or sewage sludge, bioengineering, or ionizing radiation. Before a product can be labeled organic, in quotes, a government-approved certifier inspects the farm where the food is grown to make sure the farmer is following all the rules necessary to meet USDA organic standards.
Now, the one thing on there that I'll disagree with their first paragraph, as they say, without the use of pesticides. In the second paragraph, It says organic food is produced without using most conventional pesticides. You see that slight little sleight of hand because
one of them is theirs and the other one is USDA.
Exactly, little sleight of hand there. It's and I mean, if I may ask, would you like to Google?
Well, hold on a second. Let's Google what pesticides can be used and still make it organic.
That's exactly what I was going to request.
Yeah.
It's organic pesticides approved for use in the U.S.
Here we go. Now, what are the fears of pesticides, right? People are worried about toxins getting into their food, getting in their body, and cancer.
I mean, I understand that fear partially because I went through it quite a bit. Like when I got sick a few years ago, like my first symptom wasn't celiac disease. It wasn't my joints popping out. I got the worst headache of my life one day and it never went away. Like that'll make you scared to death of everything around you. Like I went organic, I went vegan, I'd cut everything out of my diet because I was scared that, like you feel like you're getting stabbed in the eye constantly. You're going to cut everything out of your diet.
And this happened all at once for you?
One day, worst headache. And I was working, and at the time I wasn't working in the pesticide lab yet. I was working in a drug analysis lab.
And were you worried that was what was going on? That somehow or another you would absorb some of it or something?
I was the thing that I was worried because I was at the time I was there was much more Cybabe than there is here today. There was much more of me than there is here today. I'm 5'9" and I at the time weighed almost 250 pounds. I needed to lose a little of me, but it was like, all right, I'm eating shitty food. I should probably try eating healthier. But I mean, never mind just more salads. I went organic. I just cut everything out of my diet.
So there was a bunch of issues.
Yeah,
it wasn't dietary as well as.
I mean, yeah, like I cut a lot of things out, started working out everything, but you know what? I still needed medication because it turned out there was just and we figured out the headache was linked into the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And there are to clarify everything, some people, when they have one autoimmune, they can tend to cluster. So I was lucky caller 1 million, but that was the thing with it. But I tried, I looked into this and I fell for all of it. Like, so all of the pesticides are killing you. It's the toxins. So, I mean, I understand the fear of the people who were like, I need to cut toxins out of my diet.
But is there any foundation in truth? I mean,
no.
Nothing? Like pesticides are not bad for you?
Well, no, here's the thing. There is a little bit of truth that sells the lie is what I will give this, because I used to work with bulk quantities of pesticides at my last lab, and that was kind of what sealed the deal for me, that these, when they're in your food, are not going to hurt you, because the amount of testing we had to go through and the amount of regulation, I think regulation in this case is a good thing because it will stop a bad pesticide from making it to market. And I want that regulation there because I eat the food too. I don't want anyone's child to ever get hurt from something that me or another, like I don't work there anymore, but that I had any work in getting on the market. I don't ever want that to be the case.
Of course.
But once upon a time, the pesticides we had on the market were much less targeted to hurting the weeds and could hurt people too, like arsenicals, sulfuric acid. Those were early pesticides. Paris green, totally toxic, especially to the farmers and even to the farm equipment. The stuff we have now, far less toxic. And I mean, people.
When you say far less, though, is it toxic?
I mean, I'm going to qualify this answer, and I mean, I'm not qualifying it to back off from it, but everything is toxic in some dosage.
Like water. Drink
exactly.
too much water will kill you.
But I mean, so Roundup is one that people are really scared of, and it's one that a lot of people know about.
Right.
There is a great graph on this showing how less toxic it is than the pesticides it replaced, because we didn't go from using no pesticide to using Roundup. And I know someone's going to correct me saying it's an herbicide, but pesticide's the blanket term for all things that kill stuff in farming. So before Roundup, I believe the one we used was cyanazine. I could be wrong on this. But the one we used before Roundup was, in terms of the LD50, the lethal dose for about 50% of the population, it was 10 times higher than Roundup. And now we barely sell any of it. So
right, but is the issue just lethal dose, or is the issue
it's
having some sort of toxicity that affects your body, creates cancer?
Right. And I understand that's a question that people are, keep coming back to. And part of the reason that people are suspicious of it is because of its use with a GMO. And these things go through hundreds of tests and years of testing. And because of the suspicion with Roundup, it's gone through continual testing. Like they've tested to see if it accumulates in breast milk. It does not. They've tested to see if it causes cancer. Doesn't seem to. And they've tried. They've used it at higher doses.
But they've done it with mice and rats, right?
They've tested in humans, and it's been on the market for 30 years.
How do you test it in humans? Hey, dude, I'm going to see if I can give you cancer.
But I mean, like, it's been in the population, or it's been used now for, I believe, 25 years, and there doesn't seem to be... The only apparent increase in cancer is because we're living longer now. And when you have any population that lives longer, you have increased incidences of cancer. Like, we're not dying from polio anymore, so we're dying from something. Like, unfortunately, we're not going to live forever. So...
Yeah.
But...
So,
there's...
this,
Sorry, go ahead.
But this toxicity issue when it comes to Roundup or when it comes to any sort of pesticide. When you're talking about herbicides are what kills the plants, right? Kills weeds.
Absolutely.
Pesticides kills bugs, right?
Pesticides it's the blanket term. Insecticide kills bugs.
Okay. So pesticides, the whole
blanket term, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So what's the most controversial? Is it Roundup?
Roundup is controversial, and I think the reason that it became controversial is because people heard, all right, you have to genetically modify the plant so that the Roundup doesn't kill the plant,
right.
And it's this whole thing just to make money for Monsanto, and how dare you make money? And I think that was why people got mad, was because of the genetic modification link in with Roundup. And it's a new technology, or it's a newer technology, and it kind of made people a little aware of farming for the first time. And I go to farming conferences a lot of times to talk about how to communicate agriculture. And I'll sit down and ask farmers, what do you plant? Why are you planting it? What do you think of GMOs? Do you use Roundup? And do you buy from Monsanto? And do you buy from people other than Monsanto? And that handful of questions will tell me, I wish I had more videos of this, but there's a video at some point on my site with two farmers who buy from Monsanto and buy from other companies. And one of the reasons I asked that is because there's a rumor on the internet that if you buy from Monsanto, you can only buy from Monsanto. Just not true. That, every genetically modified crop is made to be Roundup ready. Again, not true. That people are being that people are dying of cancer from just being around Roundup. And recently they found that one of the reports that went through the IARC, the place that declares things cancerous, on their, group 1, 2, 2A, 2B cancer classifications, one of the reports was falsified that declared Roundup cancerous. Now, we also have to
falsified by who?
By the person who was... I have to hunt down this report, but the person who was trying to say Roundup is cancerous.
Why would they do that?
Because of a little bit of suspicion of Roundup, because people have kicked around that it's causing cancer, or, that your spleen to turn radioactive for, forever. And it's...
So is this like a chemtrails type thing?
A little bit.
It becomes one of the things that people talk about in terms of conspiracy theories.
And it gets put into the public sphere so much that people start to believe it. And here's the thing. If I saw firm evidence that Roundup had caused issues, I would say right away, just get rid of it, take it off the market. And I keep on not seeing firm evidence of it. Like there was a study, there's this group, Moms Across America. And I always get my scientific information from mom groups on the internet. But this group decided to do a breast milk study to see if Roundup accumulated in breast milk. And the way the study was done was they just had women indiscriminately send in containers of breast milk to them, and they declared the amount of Roundup to be ridiculously high in the breast milk. And I'm like, did they just tell women to spray pump bottles of Roundup into these containers and then test it? But it turned out, and this is just from knowing how analytical techniques work. Like I used to design the techniques by which we extracted, target pesticides from a matrix and, analyze them on our big overpriced machinery. But a woman who is a breast milk researcher out of the University of Washington was like, this doesn't seem right. So she designed an experiment to test if Roundup was accumulating in breast milk, and she had it verified by an independent lab, and they tested women specifically who worked in agriculture, and she had their breast milk tested specifically on days where they were spraying Roundup, and there was nothing found.
Yeah, but that's someone who's not necessarily eating the food. That's someone who's working with the food or working with Roundup, right?
And you would expect that if it was being sprayed. Well, think about it this way:
but
Roundup
isn't that the issue, though? Not to interrupt you, but the issue is people eating it.
Think about it this way: if it's in the food supply, wouldn't they be eating it as well?
I don't know. I don't know what their diet is. Like if you're getting it from people's breast milk, and those people say there's Roundup in my breast milk, and I've been eating genetically modified crops.
The other question is if these are the people that are following Moms Across America, and their whole thing is that Roundup is the devil.
So you think that they're falsifying evidence?
I think that it was not a well-controlled experiment, and it would be interesting to see how the experiment would come out if the person who runs Moms Across America, Zen Honeycutt, how it would look if Zen were to look in on every step of the process with Shelley McGuire, Dr. Shelley McGuire, to see that these people ate food that should have been sprayed with Roundup and worked in the field, and then at the end to see if their breast milk came out with nothing in it. So I think don't you
think that there'd be more likely to be some sort of conspiratorial collusion with people that actually work in farms that use Roundup rather than someone who's just checking their breast milk? Wouldn't you think that if someone's trying to prove that Roundup isn't showing up in breast milk, and you've got a bunch of people that their living relies on using Roundup?
Well, the farm workers themselves, they'd want to be safe, right?
Maybe.
And I say that as someone who's worked at a pesticide company. And when I worked there, I was just an analytical chemist. I'm not someone who had any investment in keeping that company safe from being yelled at. I wanted to be safe from the stuff I was working with.
Right, but I found it weird that you feel like there's some sort of conspiracy with these moms that are checking their breast milk, but you don't think there might possibly be some shenanigans involved in the people that actually need Roundup to make a living.
I understand what you're saying for sure, but part of the reason why I think that Dr. McGuire would have conducted a better study was, number one, independently verified, number two, knows how to do collection specimen collection accurately, and number three, monitored and independently verified from an outside lab. So it's like we don't have, and when Moms Across America was asked to show their data and how they collected the samples, they weren't willing to share all of their data on how specimen collection was
Why not?
handled.
What was their excuse for not sharing?
That I don't recall off the top of my head, but they weren't, it seems suspicious to me that they weren't willing to disclose that.
That's very suspicious.
So, and when you do an experiment, everything, and I used to work under GLP standards, which basically you throw out a glove, you have to write it down. And that's part of the standards on how you get, a chemical into use in agriculture, is you really have to be careful and forthcoming on how you do your work. Which
was the amount of pesticides that they found in breast milk uniform?
I believe they didn't find. I think they were only testing for Roundup, and they found there to be. They didn't find there to be even trace amounts, which I was kind of surprised at. I would have expected something.
No, in the Moms Across America stuff.
They found a lot.
Yeah, but was it uniform? Did everybody have a similar amount?
No, they found the amounts varied, and they were so high. It was
almost like somebody dripped some in there.
Yeah, it was suspicious, and that's why I was like, that was why I didn't buy it. The other thing is they used a technique, an analytical technique that was used for water, and that's why I'm like, this is not all techniques used for all work for all chemical matrices. So that's another reason why a different lab was probably better equipped to handle it. One specifically that analyzes breast milk. So I think the other thing is, that the other lab kind of had a bias going in because their whole thing is how Roundup is bad. So a lab that's like, I just want to know if moms are being harmed, if there's something in the breast milk. That seems like a lab that went in just wanting to know. The other lab went in saying, I hate Roundup. So if I would have. If Roundup had been found in the test that Dr. McGuire's lab had done, I would have happily accepted those results because it almost wouldn't. It would have surprised me not in the least if it had been found. But I was kind of glad that there was nothing there because it means that babies aren't getting a concentrated dose of this, just because you don't want extraneous chemicals going into the food supply.
So were they only testing people that worked in these farms? Was that the idea with the second test?
I think they did. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know one of the groups they did test were women on testing days. But think about it this way: they're not just spraying it; they're also possibly eating food that's been that's had it on there.
Yeah, but that's possibly. I would be more interested in seeing it 100% sure that these people were eating food that had been sprayed with Roundup, and that doesn't make sense to me that they didn't do that.
I want to have a look at the study again myself just to be sure of what the conditions were before.
I'm curious about both tests.
Have a look. We can have a quick peek after it for Dr. Shelley McGuire breast milk Roundup study.
Yeah, the whole thing seems a little weird to me. It's weird that one group tests high, one group tests not at all.
It is. I'm going to say it is easy to screw up a study using. If you're not sure the parameters you're supposed to use in an analytical, in a chemical analysis thing, because you can have interfering species that come up with the same peaks at the same time. The other thing is, like I said, the biggest thing is we don't know the collection parameters for the one that Moms Across America did. So,
right, and they won't tell us.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, the other thing is Dr. McGuire was doing it through a university, and she could have been in a lot of trouble if she'd falsified or data or done a test that was purposefully misleading.
Right.
So that's.
What are the pesticides? Did you Google the pesticides that are acceptable?
Yeah, there's from the.
You put them up.
There's a long list somewhere, but I had it somewhere. It's on the USA or USDA.gov website. It's like the standards of what they use to put stuff on and off of it.
Okay.
And there are organic standards that allow some substances, but they're mostly trying to get out synthetic substances. However, there are also some synthetic substances that are allowed too.
Yep.
Interesting. And this is to label something organic.
Right. And then there's a board that votes on it from time to time if somebody wants to bring something up and disagree that it shouldn't be on that list.
Isn't that weird, though? I mean, most people think, you say organic, most people think there's no pesticides. Most people think you're just growing plants.
Yep. And I mean, they sell that so well, don't they?
Yeah.
It's
For instance,
infuriating.
pheromones. Pheromones, not pheromones. Pheromones have long been used as effective non-toxic ways to confuse insects that might otherwise infest organic crops, especially fruit. So they put some certain smells to freak bugs out. Likewise, vaccines for animals are important disease prevention tools against many infectious diseases, blah, 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 especially since antibiotic therapy is prohibited in livestock.
I'm picturing an anti-vaxxer staying away from organic produce because they vaccinated it against bees.
Well, you could always grow your own food, folks, and not put anything on it. But I think large-scale domestic agriculture, if you're talking about these gigantic fields, nothing could be less natural. It's not normal to have 1,000 acres of corn. It just doesn't exist in the wild, and when you do that, you're going to run into a lot of problems.
I always go back to the argument of nothing we're doing is natural anyway.
Not a thing.
We're sitting in an air-conditioned studio in California that we'd be dead with a lot of the things that we don't have. That's
How about food? There's no food around here. Where are you growing food? No one's growing food anywhere near us.
There's nothing that we enjoy that's natural anymore.
Ice cream's not natural.
And it's goddamn delicious.
You got to get a freezer. How do you get a freezer?
It's